Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the B&H Virtual Event Space. Happy to welcome back Mahesh Thapa. Mahesh, what's going on? How you doing today?
I'm great. It's actually a wonderful day in Seattle. The rain is gone, at least temporarily. It's sunshine is out. The birds are singing. Cherry
See,
blossoms are blooming.
that's why you were so happy, because you traded the weather with us. I got it.
That's right.
It's
You're
beautiful
welcome.
by you, raining by us. But for those of you who are stuck in New York City like myself and dealing with all of the rain, good news for you all today, because Mahesh has taken us on a virtual photo walk of iconic Seattle photo stops. So that's the good news, is we get to get out of here virtually. So I want to say thank you very much to Mahesh. I want to also say thank you very much to Sony for sponsoring this event. If you have any questions, please make sure you get them in. Use the Q&A tab here on Zoom. And if you're joining us here on Vimeo or Facebook, you can go ahead and use the comment section. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you think about the virtual photo walk. We want to hear all your opinions and everything. But thanks for being here, Mahesh. I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'll see you back in a little while.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. You guys can see my screen, right? I have like 3 screens going, so make sure everything is
Yes.
working. Okay, perfect. Right. So welcome to this sort of unique experience. I think I've never done something like this before as a webinar, and I was just talking with the guys about how I was struggling to present the information in a way that it just wasn't me sharing quote unquote pretty pictures, but it was something that will be valuable for you, whether you are a native of Seattle or somebody who's thinking of visiting or have planned to visit, something that'll be worthwhile for you. Now, it's not going to be exhaustive. We can't do that in a 45-minute presentation or an hour presentation. So I'm going to pick 5 of my favorite locations, or most favorite location. There's so many in Seattle. And if things work out well, maybe we'll do another one where we talk about more. But yes, please send feedback and let us know what worked and what didn't work. And we're all also learning from this experience. So a couple of disclosures before we get started. I am a Sony Alpha Collective member, and that means all the images that I'm sharing with you here are taken on a Sony system, whether it be a Xperia or a full frame or what have you. It's all from a Sony camera and lenses. I want to acknowledge my good friend Reza Melieri, a very talented videographer and drone pilot who has provided me with a few of the drone footages that you'll see over here. And I think he's got something happening also with B&H coming up very soon. So I'm really excited to share with that. So I'll shout out to him. This is his Instagram handle, rmelieri, and his website, rmelieri.com. A really great guy. So I'm going to focus in the general area of sort of downtown or main area of Seattle. And I've got this blue donut around the Space Needle. And so everything I'll talk about with respect to Space Needle, because I think that's the most iconic location in Seattle. When people think of Seattle, they think of Pike Place Market or the Space Needle. And it's nice to have that sort of icon in the Google Maps as I show you these areas. So we're going to go as far north as the University of Washington campus, as far south as the International District and the sort of junction between I-5 and I-90. And we're going to go as far east as the Washington Arboretum, and a little bit, a couple of spots down over here. So you have at least a roadmap of where we're going. I want to start out with the quad at the University of Washington. And so here's a sort of zoomed up view of that map that I showed you before. And here is our Space Needle over here. And we're going to be talking about this area over here, sort of northeast of the Space Needle. You'd sort of take I-5, get off the exit and head to the University of Washington. I'll show you exactly where that is. But I debated about what should be the first one to talk about, because there's so many great places, but because it's spring and the cherry blossoms around the quad are just spectacular, particularly this time of year, late March, early April. So I wanted to go over that real quick. A couple of tips for you if you are planning to go. The best time is the 3rd or 4th week of March. Right now, it's sort of just past peak, but it's still quite good. If you don't have time, if you have some time later on this week or so, try to visit it if you can. Early morning is probably the best time, crack of dawn as far as I'm concerned, because it's such a popular place. And there's so many people out there. If you want a little bit of solitude, a little bit of tranquility, if you will, I think early morning is the best time to go. Sunsets are a little difficult. It's actually not that bad because by the time the sun sets in Seattle at this time of year, most of the people on campus have already left, but there are still a lot of tourists and visitors coming there. So morning is probably the best time to visit. And when you're there, people often forget about this gorgeous library that they have. It's called the Rizal Library. I'll show you an image or two of that area. And it's sort of at the south end of the quad. And I'll show you on the map exactly where that is. It's gorgeous architecture inside. If you're into any type of old libraries with beautiful hanging lights, chandeliers, stained glass windows, amazing books, these sort of colossal hallways, you really want to check out the Rizal Library, which is at the south end of the quad. So let's look at the map real quick. I'm going to play this little video that I created through Google Maps as a screenshot. So we're over there, Space Needle, and the University of Washington is over there. And I'm going to sort of move over to that area and zoom up a little bit. And the University of Washington is a pretty big area. And we're going to concentrate on this area called the Quad, University of Washington Quad. So that's where the cherry blossoms are, okay? And south of that is the Rizal Library. And you want to try to visit that if you can. You want to check on the hours to see if they're open or not. Try to time your visits so they're open. They're not open all the time. And certain days they're not open. The other day I went and it was closed, but that's another story. Let me just give you a brief idea of what this area is like. So this is the quad. This is a great video from my friend Rizal, and these are the cherry blossoms I'm talking to you about. Beautiful Seattle, downtown Seattle in the background. So this is sort of looking south from the University of Washington. And as you walk through, you can see how busy this is, right? Because this is sort of taken, I think, during midday or later part of the day. So if you want a little bit of solitude, a little bit of quiet, you want to try to get there as early as you can. Now I'm going to stop this video for a second. When you come in through this entrance right over here, there are a couple of buildings on the left and the right. And if you come during the daytime or early morning, sometimes, this is, a public institution. And this building is often open. So if you can, try to go into this building and go up to a few stories, and there's some windows out here. You can look through the windows to get a slightly different perspective on this quad, a sort of not quite a drone view, but a view sort of at the top of the building, and it offers some unique perspectives. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So for example, here's one image from one of those rooms up there and had an open window. So I was able to get up there. This is early in the morning. The sun is rising over here on the east side, just cracking above some of the buildings at the University of Washington and lighting some gorgeous golden light on the tops of the cherry blossoms. And you can see there's nobody here. So this is quite early in the morning. And I can see a little peekaboo view of Space Needle. So it's a nice compositional element there for you if you want to take advantage of it. I also like to zoom in a little bit to give a little bit different perspective. And here's one where I have changed the focal length, probably about 70 or 100 millimeters. And you can see the Space Needle a lot more prominently in the field of view. And again, these gorgeous cherry blossoms really serve to fill out the foreground. Now, if you go down by the pathway, there are also wonderful compositions to be made. There are these little benches that are sort of scattered along the pathway everywhere you go, and beautiful brick-lined pathways that really serve as great leading lines. If you have a model, for example, if you have your kids, it's a great place to take family photos, super popular. Imagine there's somebody sitting on the bench. This would be so awesome as a figure if you wanted that, with these overhanging cherry blossoms, or you can have somebody in the very distance sort of looking towards the camera or what have you. So again, lots of compositional possibilities at the quad. The spring is the best time, but other time of the year is also great. So if you are in Seattle and you haven't visited the quad, or you haven't thought about visiting the quad, it's a great opportunity. And here is sort of the pathway to get to Rizal Library. Look at this gorgeous architecture. I sort of did this in black and white because I really liked the stark contrast of these black lines that are sort of to help people not slip on these marble floors and the whites of the marble. I don't have a picture of the Rizal Library itself, but I was going to include it, but I couldn't find the file. But if you follow these steps up, you'll get right to the library, and it's an amazing place. So that is the quad. That's place number one. If you have the opportunity, again, Morning time in spring is the best time to visit. So let's go to probably the most famous location in Seattle as far as places to photograph, and that's Kerry Park. You get that iconic view of the Space Needle with Mount Rainier in the background if the weather is decent and she happens to show up. And this is the address. It's 211 West Highland Drive. No time of day is bad, but sunrise and sunsets are probably the best times. That's sort of the iconic shots of Seattle that you see. Sunrise, I recommend highly because almost nobody's there. You know, maybe you'll have a few joggers along the street, people walking their dog, but for the most part, you'll have that place all to yourself, particularly if it's in the summer months when the sunrise is super early in Seattle. So let me show you exactly what I'm talking about. The Space Needle itself, again, is over here and sort of northwest of the Space Needle, just a couple of miles, is Kerry Park. And this is the area that we're going to concentrate on. So let me show you exactly how to get there. I'm going to show you some street views. And it's actually a pretty small park. You know, you don't have an idea of what the scale of this park is, but it's pretty tiny. And depending on where you stand in the park, you can get these unique perspectives. You can have the Space Needle align better if you like, you know, not be so overlapped with the buildings behind. So I'll show you a couple of those perspectives. So let me show you the zoomed up view really quick. So we're going to zoom up over there by Highland Drive where Kerry Park is. And I'm going to put my cursor right there and go right to the street view. So this is Highland Drive. I'm facing the wrong way. Let me turn around. So as we go down Highland Parkway, you're going to head west on Highland Park. And the Space Needle and downtown is going to be on your left-hand side. And you've got this sort of gorgeous architecture and sculptures happening there. And there it is. Here's that iconic view of the Space Needle and downtown Seattle. Okay. One of my favorite places to shoot from is actually around this artwork over here. And there's a water fountain right over here. This water fountain, actually, I'll show you a picture of the water fountain. You can make a really nice perspective with the water fountain. But if you don't want to have too much overlap of the Space Needle with the buildings, one of the best places to photograph this iconic location is at the very extreme western corner over here, sort of where these people are. You can walk down this pathway a little bit over here. And there's actually even a little metal stand over here. If you've forgotten your tripod, you can use a little metal stand over here to prop your camera up, particularly if it's very early in the morning or in the evening when the light may be low and you need some stability. So let me, so here is an example where, you know, this was taken at sunset, a beautiful evening where you have Mount Rainier out. This is sort of a classic shot that when you walk up there, if you're lucky enough to have good light, this should be the type of shot you can get. Now, here's that water fountain shot I was telling you about. So something that you don't see very often. I was lucky in the sense that it had also rained in the distance and the sun had just come up and I was able to get a rainbow. But if you position yourself just right and maybe have a friend or a spouse or somebody press that little water fountain button, you can get this little cool perspective and frame the city and Space Needle under this perspective. So something to try out. If you're lucky enough, again, to come there, again, this is sunrise. The sun is coming up behind the Space Needle towards the left over here. Mount Rainier's out. And we often get foggy days, particularly in the winter and spring months. And I sort of look at the forecast every day to see what it's like. And they give you sort of an elevation where the fog is. When it's just right, you want to try to get out to a place like this because the Highland Drive is a relatively high location and you're sort of almost at eye level with many of the buildings and Space Needles. So you're often above this low level of clouds and low level of mist, and you get these gorgeous perspectives of downtown Seattle in the Space Needle. On particular months, particularly around October, if you're lucky and the skies are clear, the full moon rises directly behind the Space Needle. So, you know, in the late summer, sort of fall months, look for that moonrise, and you can use apps such as the photographer's ephemeris or photo pills that tell you exactly where the moon's going to rise. But typically the late summer, early fall months, when you see a full moon is coming up and you have the opportunity to be in Seattle, this is the type of shot you can get. You can actually see some of the people in here. Here I've used a pretty long telephoto lens, but not super long. This is maybe about 300 millimeters to frame the Space Needle and the moon behind it. Another sunrise shot. So I positioned myself towards the right where I've tried to minimize the overlap. There's still a little bit of overlap with the background building here. I think that's the Columbia Tower. But otherwise, this would be smack dab in front of this. And I think compositionally that wouldn't have worked, but this is a much cleaner composition. And you can achieve that by shooting from sort of the a very westernmost portion of that park. Okay, we're moving right along. The next one I want to talk about is Dr. Jose Rizal Bridge. And I love this area because compositionally, it just flows so beautifully. You've got these gorgeous S-shaped curves. You've got these streaks of traffic light. You've got iconic downtown Seattle. You've got multiple places to choose from. You've got the stadiums in the background. And basically where you want to go, here's the Space Needle over here at the upper left-hand corner. And you've got your Rizal Bridge right over here. I don't know if you realize it or not, but this is I-90, and this is sort of the beginning or the end of I-90, depending on your perspective. And the other end ends on the East Coast. So it's kind of cool that you're seeing the end or the genesis of a huge freeway that extends all the way across the country, and it's such a great place to be, this sort of confluence of all the freeways. So let me show you exactly how to get there, and some tips about this particular location, because it is a little funky. The area is a little little suspect sometimes. So try to get there, maybe with a friend or with some company. I'm always a little leery of this area. So you're going to go along this street right here. It's called Gulf Street, and this is the bridge right over here. And this is the perspective you get. Here's Smith Tower. Here's downtown Seattle. Football and baseball stadiums. And I'm going to zoom up in this area just a little bit. I want to show you one little thing first. As you go along this bridge, you could pretty much stand anywhere along here and take the shot, right? But you've got this light pole right over here. So particularly if you're shooting at night, and if you have like a DSLR and you don't close off the little eyepiece, the light that shines from this light can actually screw up your metering. So be careful when that light is on at night. So try not to stand directly underneath this light, even though it's one of the best places to stand. Or if you do, you want to use that eyepiece cover to eliminate any light coming into the system. There's also this light over here that's sort of shining light onto the street or the freeway. I like to stand to the right, sort of north of this light, because if I don't, this totally gets into my composition, particularly if I'm using a very ultra wide angle lens. However, if I stand over on this side, I can exclude that, yet still include both the stadiums and downtown Seattle with a wide angle lens. Let me play it out a little more for you here. And you can really play with the composition. You can take tight shots of the freeways. You can take tight shots of the stadium. And if you go a little bit towards the south side, you can even frame this right here. You can even the railing as part of the composition. And I think in certain situations that works really well. You can get tight zoom lenses. You can use this freeway and just pick out individual buildings to get some different perspectives on the city. Now, there's a second place that some people don't know about, particularly people who've not been to Seattle, but you can walk along the bridge this way and head towards this PacMed building. This is where Amazon used to be. Now it's sort of a medical building, and come up this street right here, South Charles. And there's a little park here. It's a free leash dog park. You can park along here and then go through the gates and walk down over here towards the city. And if you go over here, you're going to see a little opening in the chain link fence. I think photographers must have created it, because it's just perfectly positioned to get this slightly different perspective on the city. So you want to, if you have a chance to go down there into that. So this is where you want to be a little bit careful, because it's a little shady. I've seen needles there and things like that. So just be careful, just be aware of your surroundings when you go there. So let me show you a couple of pictures of what I'm talking about. So I often do workshops in this location, because this is a great part. And I often do sort of documentary filming, educational filming, whether I'm teaching with the Sony full frame or even a little Xperia. This is a great venue. And if you watch the news, you'll see a lot of reporters also come out here, because it just provides a great perspective on the city. So here is, for example, a very ultra wide angle lens. This is, I think, a 14 mm lens where I can get the entire freeway in the field of view, the city, the sun is just setting. And if you look, that pole would be sitting right over here. So because I've gone a little bit more north of the pole, even though I'm using this very, very ultra wide angle lens, I can exclude it from my composition because it just looks terrible. And here, I think including the railing has helped the composition, and you can be the judge of that. But given the ultra wide angle lens of 14 mm, they're sort of unavoidable. So I just used it to my advantage. So this is one sort of perspective that you get. This is I-90 over here coming in and merging onto I-5. So again, the genesis or the end, if you will, of a major freeway that spans the entire United States. Here's a slightly tighter perspective from a similar location. Oh, I forgot one thing over here. These railings serve a purpose for the photographer, believe it or not. This is a bridge. So when heavy cars and buses go along this bridge, it actually vibrates a little bit. So I'm always leery of these long exposures. I wait for a big bus to go by, or I look north and south and see if there are any heavy cars coming. When they're not coming, that's when you want to shoot. Otherwise, there's so much vibration on this bridge that your exposure will end up getting really soft. And oftentimes, this railing is so high that you may not be able to position a tripod such that it's above this railing. So, or the tripod is positioned so far back from the railing that you are forced to include the railing in your field of view. So I get around that by placing two little tripod legs on the bridge or on the railing itself. So the tripod is much closer to the railing as opposed to putting the tripod legs on the ground. I put two of the tripod legs on the railing itself, on this part of the railing, so you're much closer to your field of view. Here's again a slightly different perspective from the same location. And this is that little opening in the fence I talked to you about in that dog park area. So if you go down that dog park, go around the path, you'll get to this chain link fence, and it's pretty high. So it's hard to get the tripod above this, but I'm sure, it wasn't me, I'm sure some photographer probably cut a little chain link part of it out, and it's just enough to position your camera and lens to get a little different perspective. And this is the perspective you get. It's a more direct view into the city. You can see the little bit of the wheel over here. Here is the traffic going. It's a tighter appearance to that S-shaped curve versus the S-shaped curve you got from the bridge itself. And any time of day is great. This is in the morning, but well, actually, this was in the afternoon, late afternoon. It wasn't quite sunset, but the rays were just so gorgeous that day. So anytime I have some time or I'm feeling bored and I say, I need a pretty picture, I need to see something really great, this is where I come out. It's just very an awesome place to be. Here is a shot from that PacMed building. So that red building that I showed you in the video, it's called the PacMed building. It used to be the Amazon building. And if you're lucky, there may be events going on there and the door may be open. So if you go up a few floors, there's a balcony on some of these floors. You can get out there and get some great perspective. It almost looks like a drone shot, but it's not. It's not a drone shot because it's a long exposure shot. It's hard to get a drone shot with this much clarity and with this long exposure. But again, here is your I-90 coming in to merge on with I-5, a different perspective indeed. And you can see the wheel and Smith Tower a lot more clearly. And finally, like I said, you can use a zoom lens, you can change your perspectives, and there's so many compositions to be had from this bridge that I feel like if you take a few telephoto zooms and a couple of wide angle lenses, you're going to come away with something great, and probably a couple of things. Okay, let's move on to Pier 66, another one of my favorite places. Here again is your Space Needle, so you have a general idea where the Space Needle is. And if you go south of the Space Needle towards the water, this is Pier 66 right over here. You're going to see Anthony's Restaurant. You're going to see the Marriott. But let me show you a little video of how exactly what it looks like. So I'm going to center it over here by Pier 66. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. And then I'm going to go over here by Anthony's Bar, Alaskan Way. If you go a little further south, you're going to see Anthony's Bar right over here, Pier 66. So I'm going to put my cursor right there and give you the street view from that area, because this is where you want to approach this area from. So here's Alaskan Way. Let me just pause it for a quick second. You can walk along this pathway and you get these gorgeous views. You get the gorgeous view of the wheel, the downtown. A little area over here is next to a marina. You can get these gorgeous reflections. I'll show you images of that. You can walk this way along the south border of Anthony's Restaurant to get another unique perspective. But my favorite perspective is if you go along this way on the street and then go up these steps. So let me tell you what I'm talking about. So again, this is the Smith Tower over here, the wheel over there. But if you turn around and go in this direction to the sign where it says Pier 66 and sort of go up these steps up here, this is where you get the best perspective on the city if you go up here. Let me show you exactly what I'm talking about. I have a little video that Rizal helped me make to show exactly what I'm talking about. So I am crossing the street and going up Pier 66 up the steps. And again, there's Anthony's Restaurant. And this was not a particularly great day as far as the weather goes, but at least it gives you an idea of what you can see from all the way up there. The needle is not visible, but that's okay. Sometimes you can get Mont Rainier over here. You've got the wheel, you've got Smith Tower. And also this has a nice little railing. So even if you have a little tabletop tripod, you can just stand it up there. You don't need a full gear if you don't have that. So any time of day is great. Sunrise is great. Sunset is great. The one caveat is oftentimes, well, not oftentimes, sometimes a big cruise ship docks in this location. So when a big cruise ship is docked in this area, they often close off the very top, so you may not be able to get there. And it's unpredictable when the cruise ship is coming. So I just advise you to head out there. Even if you can't get to the very top, the views from the bottom are also great. But if you can get to the top, you can get some amazing, unique perspectives of the city. So here's one from the top. I've actually used the sort of L-shaped of Anthony's Restaurant to lead the viewer directly into the city. And you get this nice view of downtown over here. You can get a wider area perspective and to include the wheel and Mont Rainier if Mont Rainier is out, but a tighter composition also I think works very well over here. Now, I also advise you to bring a big telephoto lens because you're so high up, you sort of look above the marina and you can see out into the distance, into the Puget Sound, and you've got these ferries that are coming in. And sometimes early in the morning, you've got this gorgeous fog, right? We talked about the fog that can come through Seattle, but you've got these great clouds that form and the light just hits it just right. And you can get these great telephoto compressed views of the iconic ferries coming into Seattle. It's not just ferries either. You can also have tugboats. And these are the Olympic Mountains in the background over here in the sunset time with the light rays coming on an angle. Again, it's a great compositional element. And many people disregard this view because they're so mesmerized by the cityscape. But if you just take a telephoto lens and just look out in the distance, pick out a boat here, a ship over there. Sometimes you'll have parasailers, kayakers. They make for some really great compositions. Now, if you walk down towards the marina, this is the perspective that you get from the marina. Again, there's a gorgeous night. We had a nice sunset, but you've got these beautiful boats. Sometimes you've got these old time boats that are docked, so you can really use them to form a great little foreground. And oftentimes the marina, the water is so still that you get some mirror-like reflection. So I really like that about this part of the city. Looking the other way, also at the ground level, if you haven't made it up to the top, looking towards the city, this is behind Anthony's Restaurant. This is Anthony's Restaurant over here. Again, you can reuse the railing as a compositional element. You can use it for support, but here you can actually see the wheel. You can see Smith Tower over here, downtown Seattle. And if the light is just right, and again, see how still that water is. The prior shot I shot from over here, looking this way. This one, I'm a little further north of this location, looking more towards the city, a little lower perspective than the one from above. And if you walk a little further along that street, Alaskan Way that I mentioned, get closer to the wheel, Again, you've got these gorgeous reflections. You've got these shops that have these colored lights and colored buildings. Miners Landing is it's a beautiful building, viewed both from this side and the other side. If it has rained, for example, a lot of these surfaces over here will be wet, will have little puddles, and they can form some amazing reflections for you to make some great compositions. A lot of people will shoot the wheel reflected. They often change the pattern or colors on this wheel. So for example, if the Seahawks are playing, they'll probably have like a number 12 on here. If it's Halloween, they'll have like a little pumpkin, all made with different lights. And so it's worth visiting many times during the year, I think, because each time you go, you get something a little different in the wheel, and the conditions are just a little bit different. On this one, I was lucky, I actually caught a little moon rising over here. So let's go to the Arboretum next. Probably one of my favorite places in Seattle to visit, particularly during the fall. Spring is also great right now. For example, the blooms are awesome right now, but I think fall is especially choice at this location. Spring, I'd rather go to the Quad. Fall, I'd rather go to the Arboretum. And overcast days are actually quite great because the colors aren't being washed out by the bright sun. So fall is just perfect. Now you can use the bright sun to advantage if you hide it behind some leaves and you get this sort of backlit effect. But I think fall days, particularly if it's overcast, which we have an abundance of in Seattle, is a great time to visit. So let me show you exactly how to get there. And it's a pretty big place, okay? So I wanna show you exactly my favorite place in the Washington Arboretum that I love to visit. So here it is over here. And this whole area is the Arboretum. But I'm gonna just show you one place that I think is great. You travel along this road over here. It's the Montlake area. And that area is called East Forest Island Road, Foster Island Road. And you can park right over here. Broadmoor parking, you go along East Forest Road, and there's this gate, Memorial Gate. You can park here or you can ride your car, but if you ride your car through the gate, you may not find parking. So I just park over here or park over there and walk along this pathway, this Arboretum Drive East. And you want to get to the area that says Japanese maples. This is what really looks great in the fall area. So let me show you what it looks like. So I'm driving along the Arboretum South Road towards that maple area. And you can see in the fall how beautiful the colors are, just even from these Google images. And you sort of see this little parking area over here. I wouldn't count on finding parking because there's maybe room for like 6 or 7 cars, and it's usually pretty full. On this particular day, looks like there were some spots. But I really like this spot because once you get here, you can go along this pathway. There's this gorgeous steps that lead up this way, this beautiful S-shaped curve steps that lead up. I'll show you a picture of that. And if you go further this way, you're going to get to this amazing little pond. Oftentimes the fall leaves have fallen off and they fall on the surface of the pond, or they sink below the pond, and they make these great abstract patterns of shallow and deep layers of color. And as you go further along this pathway, you're going to see other giant maples. You know, there's a famous maple bush, not a maple bush. It's a big bush in Oregon, but there's equally beautiful maples here in the Arboretum that people just don't know about, but still give this great perspectives. So fall, it's a great time to visit. Let me show you exactly what some of this looks like. So here I am just sort of walking through the Arboretum, so you get an idea of what the colors are. And I often go here to do, again, documentary stuff, talk about cameras, lenses. That's my friend Rizal, again, serving as my model back there. Here we're talking about how to do certain portraits, why certain lenses are great, external light source like this. But you'll see some photographers, some videographers out there doing these types of things just because it's such a gorgeous location. And look at these colors that you see here. So for example, here's that pond I was telling you about. There's a little area you can walk to, and then you've got these gorgeous red, orange, yellow leaves, and especially when there's a mixture of leaves still on the trees and leaves that have fallen on the water, it just makes for some gorgeous compositions. Here, look at this. You know, this is quote unquote technically past peak, but I love the fact that there's a carpet of gradient of colors on the floor, along with still a lot of color in the trees. So these are the maple bushes that I'm talking about, that if you can actually go underneath them and shoot up, and you can get these beautiful abstract appearance of these trees. So it's a great place to visit during the fall. And here's, for example, an abstract image on the surface of the pond that I showed you. So if you zoom up a little bit, or maybe even take a little bit of a telephoto lens, you can get these great effects. You can have some leaves that are on the surface, some leaves that are sunken, and when they sort of come together on different planes, it creates this almost abstract appearance. Like I call this the fallen star look on the pond. Again, look at these gorgeous colors, right? Fall is an amazing time. I mean, every shade of color. You talk about New England having amazing colors, but Seattle is pretty dang close. You'll see these benches all over the place, right? It's a great place for photo shoots, great place to take a model or your family, or even doing some selfies. And all these trees have these sort of overhanging type of appearance. So this really does well to shade the, if it's shiny, if there's a lot of sunlight, it actually shades the area so you get some good exposure. Compositionally, it works really well. And like I said, even if it is shiny, you can sort of hide behind these beautiful leaves and have the light shine through the leaves to give this backlit effect that can also be very gorgeous. And finally, there's that sort of a wider view of that pond. The lit stuff is the leaves that are being reflected on the water, and it's from the trees in the distance, and all these other different colors. You've got moss, green moss, fallen leaves, and it almost looks like a Monet painting. So it's a great place to visit, particularly in the fall time. And here's that S-shaped curve I was telling you about. As you walk into the Arboretum, you'll see these steps all over the place. And a lot of them are just compositionally just very well placed, I think. And you've got these red maples, these orange maples, and again, this gorgeous leading your eye directly into the picture. Just walk around there and you'll find plenty of these types of spots. Okay, so I wanted to leave a little time afterwards so I could answer some questions if you had any, particularly about what equipment I might be using, so on and so forth.
Yeah, awesome, Mahesh. We definitely have some great questions that have been coming in, so keep them coming if you haven't already. But I will first say thank you. That was a great little photo walk we went on. I feel like I got out of the house today. I did something.
I'm glad. It was a shot that I was going to work, but hopefully people got some good stuff out of that.
Yeah, not just looking out the window and praying to go outside. So we'll start with,
and what's great about these locations, it's not like a big trek, it's literally walking distance here and there. You drive to an area, you park, and you just walk around for 15-20 minutes and you come to these great locations.
I can appreciate that. As a New Yorker, walking for me is everything. If I gotta hop on a subway or an Uber, forget it. I'm out.
Right.
So we'll start off with Steven here. Steven asks a question that you kind of answered a little bit, but it's kind of a two-parter. So he wants to know, he's looking to shoot the full moon with the Seattle Skyline. Do you use photo pills or Starwalk or other apps to help plan the location of the rising moon, which is part one? Part two of that would be, do you shoot two exposures for the moon and foreground and merge, as I would find the moon to be too bright if past astronomical twilight? Thank you.
Right. No, great questions. And my favorite app is PhotoPills. I rely on that, but I also like PhotoWalks because I like the preview I get with PhotoWalks. I can just hold the camera up to where I am, and I can move the timeline. I can see exactly where the moon is rising once I'm at that location. So that's the benefit, I think, of Starwalk, is once you're at the location, I like being able to get a preview of what things will look like, where the moon will rise with respect to the building. Do I have to move a little left, move a little right? PhotoPills give you the general idea. I use PhotoWalk to refine it, if you will. And as far as the double exposure, it all depends on the time. If the moon is rising at your location just when the sun is setting, then you don't need a double exposure because there's enough ambient light to the buildings that you don't have to double expose, right? But if the moon is rising at 10 p.m. where it wants to be, and the sky is black and the building lights are on and the rest of the shadow of the buildings are in contrast, then unless unless you want to really underexpose for the moon and then boost up the shadow, which brings up a lot of noise, you have to double expose. That's my opinion. So for me, it all depends on what time. So I love to shoot those types of shots, and it doesn't happen very often, right at sunrise or sunset when there's still some ambient light.
Excellent. Now, just following up on that question, because we're already talking about it and we're talking about night stuff. Stephen also wanted to follow up. What would be the best places and times for bioluminescence in and around Seattle? Is there a way to know where they are day by day or week by week, as well as driving 2 to 3 hours? He's driving 2 to 3 hours a night without a payoff. Just want to know if there's a good way for that.
No, not that I know of. So I've heard people talk about. I actually haven't photographed the bioluminescence yet. I mean, it's on my list. So I'm just not knowledgeable enough to answer that question. If he figures it out, let me know. Because the aurora lights are also happening now, and some people are wanting to capture the aurora lights in the sky with the bioluminescence in the foreground. So I think that would make an amazing picture. But I just don't have an answer for that. I'm sorry.
Wonderful. Now, Danny wants to know, first of all, I said, thank you very much for sharing the iconic locations. Love the work. So Danny, I agree wholeheartedly. We're with you on that. But Danny wants to know, why'd you choose Sony?
Which Danny is this?
I will not reveal my source.
Well, there are several reasons. It's a long-winded answer, but when I first got into digital, I felt they made the best sensors. And as a landscape photographer, resolution is important to me, sure, but what's most important to me really is dynamic range. I just can't get enough dynamic range. For example, those shots we talked about the moon, exposing one, exposing the other. I always found that, whether I was using APS-C sensor or a full frame sensor, Sony just gave me the best dynamic range. And I know that Sony makes sensors for so many other manufacturers. And I'm thinking, well, and why not just go to the source that makes the sensor? And then they started adding these great lenses, and then they're one of the first, if not the first people to do mirrorless. So the gear was lighter. So all those reasons. I mean, yes, I'm a Sony ambassador, but I think every manufacturer makes amazing cameras, amazing lenses. It's just that I've been with Sony for such a long time. I'm so used to the system, and they're constantly updating their technology that I've loved them. And they've been good to me too. So over the years.
Awesome. Wonderful. Now, we've got a few questions from Jesse, so we'll kind of follow them up. Jesse wants to know, did you take any of the photos with an Xperia? And if so, what shutter speed and ISO, and which lens did you use?
That's a great question. So stay tuned for the next seminar webinar we're doing, which is on mobile photography. And if you had a keen eye on some of the videos that I showed you, on the tripod was an Xperia. So I will be sharing quite a few images taken with the Xperia and then mobile photography. None of the images I shared today was with the Xperia, not because they weren't good enough, but because I was saving them for the next webinar. And I treat the Xperia shutter speed, ISO, just like I would any other alpha camera. So that's the sort of benefit I think of Xperia, is that you treat it like a regular camera, and it works great. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Excellent. I love it. A good little segue into, what's to come from Mahesh. But maybe we can put a little feeler out there, because I'll follow up with Jesse's question. I don't want you to give everything away, because obviously we want people to tune in. But we like to sprinkle a little bit of a kind of incentive for people to come back. So Jesse wants to know if you have any tips for something like only having an Xperia 5.3.
Oh yes. My tip is treat it like a regular camera. So I love the Xperia lineup, mainly because it doesn't rely so much on computational photography, right? It really, I think, I'm not comparing anything, but many manufacturers out there, they're so invested in computational photography, with multiple exposure blending, ISO blending, things like that. To me, it looks a little too digital. Sometimes the night images look too bright. with the Xperia, it does exactly what you tell it to do. So, if you want if you want a great nighttime shot, put it on a tripod, shoot at low ISO, make sure you have enough stability for your tripod, and you'll be rewarded with these amazing high quality images, whether using the Xperia 1 or 5 or the I. The sensors are so good and the lenses are so good, but it does take a little work, right? The camera and the machine is not going to do that much for you if you are a photographer. So it's a great opportunity to learn photography if all you have is a mobile system.
Excellent. See, there you go. But if you want the full capacity, come back. It's already up. I think we're looking at May, right?
Yeah, sometime in May, correct.
I think it's the 9th. I want to say it's May 9th.
Yeah, like especially if you want to do manual stuff with your Xperia, or which can be translated to other camera phones, we want to pay attention. You find out how to use filters, what tripods are best for this. That's where I'm going to discuss all of that stuff.
Awesome. We're excited for that. Now our buddy Reza is in the house. He's
Reza
watching. So we're in the hot seat. Hopefully we didn't mess up over here, Reza. He wants to know, what do you suggest to get the best reflections on the water? Polarizer or no polarizer?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So the short answer is no polarizer, right? Because polarizers, what do? They reflect, they reduce glare, and reflections are basically glare, right? But there's a fine line between what type of glare you want to get rid of. Sometimes if it's a glare from like the sun just washing it out, or you want to be able to look into the water a little bit further, deeper in the water, and you want some of the material from deeper under the water to show through, then you may want to engage the polarizer just a little bit. So it's not an all or none situation. That's, I think people need to realize that you can partially engage polarizer. It doesn't have to be completely. So you can get rid of the unwanted type of glare and still keep enough of the reflections that it makes a great image.
Great. And just so everybody knows, because I want everybody to be aware, I did go ahead and drop the link for the May 9th event. So if you want to click on that and you want to pre-register for it, for the mobile photography with Mahesh, by all means, go ahead. It can add it to your Google Calendar. The internet's a wonderful place, and this way you don't have to remember. It'll remind you.
That's right.
Now, Frankie's joining us on Facebook, wants to know what lenses would you recommend? Say 2 or 3 if you were to be going out.
Right. So for me, it depends on what camera I'm using. So my main camera for most things is the Sony a7R4. But because it has such a high resolution, I can take less lenses. I've always said that you can compensate for telephoto reach by getting a high megapixel camera. So if I have something like the A7C or the A7 III, then I will probably take 3 lenses, right? So if I have the A7C or A7 III, which is 24 megapixels or something like that, I would take an ultra wide, which would be a 16 to 35 f4. I would take the 24 to 105 f4, and maybe the 70 to 200 or the 100 to 400. That's the last one is just, it may be too big, it may be too much to carry. So if you only had 2 lenses to take, it would be the 16 to 35 and the 24 to 105. Now, the 24 to 105 is amazing on the A7R4 because now I can crop the 105 millimeter 50% and still get 200 millimeter reach and still have about 30 megapixels of image to work with. So I'm a big fan of carrying less lenses, lighter on your load, but using a higher megapixel camera and still be able to crop.
Great. Now, here we go. You ready for it?
Oh God, here we go.
Here we go.
Is it Derek?
No, it's not Derek. This is definitely, I mean, obviously a lot of these questions, just keep in mind when we're answering these questions, some of these are factual. Some of them are opinion based. So there is no endorsement here. These are just merely opinions in these instances. I want to preface that. I don't want to get any hate mail over here, but Jesse wants to know, in your opinion, A9 or AS7R?
A7S, no, A7SR. I don't know what that is.
Sorry, I think it means A7SR. A7.
A7. There's an A7S.
A7S,
And
maybe
there's
he
an
needs A7S, A7.
Okay, I'll talk about all of them.
There we go.
I'll talk about all of them. I have experience with all those cameras. Uh, if you can swing it and you could only have one camera, a Sony camera, it would be the A1 because it does everything. It's got 50 megapixels for your landscapes. It's got amazing eye autofocus, speed, dual card slots, that USB, that the Type 2 cards. It's just sort of a do everything, right? But it's an expensive camera. You know, it's like almost $6,000, maybe $5,500. I have it, but what's important to me is resolution. As being a landscape photographer, being able to crop more. You know, so for the stuff that I do, unless I'm shooting birds or unless I'm doing wildlife, for which I take the A1, I take the A7R, R4, and I would even take the R3. You know, because that still has 30 some odd megapixels of resolution. But at this point, A7R4 is what I do. I'm not as much into super high quality video as I know a lot of hybrid shooters are. So you have to, again, as you said, it all depends on what you do and what your situation is. But if you told me I could only have one camera and one lens with me for the rest of my life, it would be A7R4 and the 24-105 f4. I don't even need an f2.8.
Simple. See, he's such a simple man. Simple, modest, nothing fancy over here. Now, Stephen did mention, just as an FYI, there is a Facebook page for bioluminescence called PNW Bioluminescence that may help, but he hasn't gone out either, and he'd love to invite you along. So,
all right, sounds great.
So
I think I know what Stephen this is.
Wonderful. Now we'll finish this off. I know everything here we talked about today was photography related, but I want to know you're out, you're walking around, like you said, everything's within 15 to 20-minute distance of each other. And I don't know about you, but when I go out, I get hungry. Mahesh. So let's ask you, and I'm sure the people will be happy as they're going out and they're walking around. Where do you got to stop off to get a bite to eat in this area?
Well, I mean, it depends. There's so much great food. So I always tell people, whenever I travel anywhere outside of Seattle, I never order salmon because invariably I'll be disappointed, right? So wherever you go, if you order the salmon, you won't go wrong. It's some of the best, I mean, probably the best salmon I've had anywhere that is Seattle. So it's sort of you'll find this almost everywhere. So I love Ivar's, and they make great salmon. They make great clam chowder. It's ubiquitous. And I know exactly what I'm getting when I go there.
Excellent. So there you go. Seattle, you've got salmon. Philly, you've got the cheesesteak. New York, you got the slice of pizza. So we're covered. We got the staples. So Mahesh, I want to thank you again for being here. It's always wonderful to have you here, and you always provide a tremendous wealth of information and knowledge. So we really appreciate that. If you're still watching, Reza, thank you for helping us out with some of the drone footage. We're looking forward to seeing you back here as well. Great buddy of the event space as well. And thank you to Sony, right? Thank you to Sony for sponsoring the event, because without Sony, we can't have wonderful events like this. So thank you to them very much. And of course, the most important of all, thank you to everybody viewing at home, whether you're watching this live or after the fact. It allows us to bring great educational content and have a lot of fun while doing so. So really appreciate it. That's all the time we have for right now, but we look forward to seeing you back here shortly. This has been another edition of the B&H Virtual Event Space. We'll catch you next time.